The sky over Nova Prime burned red and black. Smoke coiled from the shattered cities like serpents, and the air smelled of scorched metal and fear. Far above, the alien warlord ships loomed, massive and alien, their hulls like living obsidian, bristling with weapons that spat fire across the landscape. The ground shook with each explosion, tossing humans to the pavement as glass and debris rained down. Captain Mara Voss stood on the observation deck of the colony's command center, her hands clenched over the control console. The situation was beyond anything she had ever imagined. On the screens, the cities she had sworn to protect were burning, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble in minutes. She could see families running, screaming, clutching whatever they could carry. Children, eyes wide with terror, stumbled through dust and smoke, while the elderly collapsed under the weight of panic. Status report. Mara barked into the comms, her voice tight with urgency. Lieutenant Corey's voice trembled. The orbital defenses, they're being shredded. Shields at 20%, Captain. Communications arrays, we can barely keep the SOS signal alive. The aliens are hunting our transmissions, they're jamming, scrambling, intercepting anything that leaves the planet. Mara's stomach twisted. Sending an SOS had been their only hope. If the Galactic Council received it, perhaps reinforcements could arrive in time. Perhaps. But the Council had always been slow, bureaucratic, more interested in diplomacy than action. Every second they delayed was a second closer to extinction. She clenched her jaw and turned back to the main console. Patch the SOS through. Keep it steady. Keep it alive. I don't care if we have to fry the arrays ourselves to get it out. Corey nodded, his fingers dancing across the controls with a desperation that mirrored Mara's own. Sparks flew from damaged circuits, and alarms blared in every corridor. The command center itself seemed alive with panic, the air thick with tension and fear. Outside, the colony trembled under the relentless bombardment. On the central screen, a flickering red light indicated the status of the outgoing SOS. It wavered, brightening and dimming like a heartbeat on the verge of stopping. Mara swallowed hard, trying to steady her racing pulse. Every flicker of that light was a thread of hope, and yet she felt it fraying. Captain, Corey whispered, almost too quietly to hear, if this fails. Don't finish that sentence, Mara cut him off sharply. She refused to give voice to despair. Not yet. Not while there was still a chance, however slim, that help might arrive. The alien ships moved with terrifying precision, orbiting in patterns that suggested intelligence and malice. Enormous energy cannons charged and fired, tearing chunks from the planet's crust and sending columns of fire into the skies. Entire districts were vaporized in moments, leaving nothing but blackened ground and twisted metal. Mara's stomach knotted at the destruction. She had grown up on Nova Prime. She knew every street, every building, every park where children once played. Now, much of it was gone. Then, amidst the chaos, a shadow appeared. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible against the backdrop of war. But then it grew, spreading across the starfield like a stain, larger than any ship Mara had ever seen. Her breath caught in her throat. She had fought in the frontier before, had seen alien vessels of unimaginable size and power, but nothing prepared her for this. The shadow moved closer, slow, deliberate. It was jagged, enormous, like the spiked crown of some celestial monster. The sensors struggled to read it. The readings were chaotic, as if the ships themselves defied conventional physics. The alien warlord's ships froze mid-attack, as if they sensed something far more dangerous than themselves. Is that real? Corey stammered, staring at the display in disbelief. Mara did not answer immediately. She could feel it in her bones, the calm before a storm, the moment when hope and fear collided in a single heartbeat. This was no standard fleet. No reinforcements from the Galactic Council would look like this. These ships, these were something else. Something ancient, something alive in a way that no human or alien technology could match. The SOS signal flickered once more, and then steadied, somehow stronger against the interference. Mara leaned forward, fingers hovering over the console. Perhaps this shadow had come because of their call. Perhaps it was the help they had prayed for, or perhaps it was something far worse. The alien warlords' laughter, which had once filled the colony with terror, faltered. Their ships shifted, weapons twitching nervously as if the pilots themselves felt the weight of what was coming. Mara watched, tense, as the massive, jagged ships drew closer. Their presence was oppressive, casting a shadow over every burning city, a shadow that seemed to devour the light of the twin suns. Then, with a sudden, deafening roar that shook the command center, the first of the strange ships entered the system. Mara felt the floor tremble beneath her boots. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the command center's energy shields flared to life, desperately trying to hold against some unseen force. Kore's voice was barely audible. "Captain, they're moving in." "Yes," Mara said, her voice calm but hard, steadier than she felt. "They are here. And whatever happens next, we survive. One way or another, we survive." Outside, the aliens braced themselves. Inside, humans clung to hope like a fragile lifeline. And above them all, the shadowed ships of the unknown approached, jagged and monstrous, answering a call that had never expected an answer. The galaxy was about to change forever. The silence in space was broken by a sound no human had ever heard before, a low, resonant rumble that shook Nova Prime as if the stars themselves were trembling. Mara Voss pressed her hands against the console, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the main screen. The shadow she had seen earlier was no longer distant. It had arrived. The Deathworlders' ships filled the viewport, massive and jagged, black as obsidian, their surfaces crawling with strange spikes and glowing veins of orange energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. They moved with terrifying precision, slicing through the void as if gravity and inertia meant nothing to them. The alien warlord ships, once the hunters, now hesitated, twisting in confusion, their formations breaking under some instinctive fear. Kore's voice cracked over the comms. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this. They're huge. Every sensor reading, it's insane. The numbers don't even make sense." Mara didn't take her eyes off the display. "Stay focused. Watch their movement. Record everything." The Deathworlders didn't announce themselves. They didn't negotiate. They didn't speak in any language Mara could recognize. And then the attack began. It was swift. One of the alien warlords' frigates fired a burst of energy, trying to push the newcomers back. The Deathworlders didn't dodge. They didn't even slow. In an instant, their ship lashed out with an energy beam that tore through the frigate like it was made of paper. Fire blossomed across its hull, twisting it into molten metal before it even had time to react. "By the stars," Kore whispered, leaning forward, unable to look away. They just destroyed it. Instantly." Mara clenched her fists. "Keep watching. Every move counts." Another alien ship tried to flee, banking sharply toward the system's edge. A Deathworlder ship followed, gliding across space with terrifying speed. Its blackened hull seemed to ripple, spikes flexing like living muscle, and then a pulse of energy erupted from it, engulfing the fleeing vessel in an explosion that turned it into nothing more than sparks and debris. Humans on the colony watched from below, the windows of the command center revealing a spectacle that was as horrifying as it was magnificent. Their attackers, who had laughed at their defenses moments ago, now faltered. Some began retreating, others scrambled to regroup, but it was futile. The Deathworlders moved with a precision and brutality that defied comprehension. "Captain," Kore said, voice tight. "They're not human. Not even like the aliens. They're something else. Something worse." Mara didn't reply. She was too busy scanning the reports, tracking patterns in the Deathworlders' attacks. Each strike was calculated, methodical. No collateral damage beyond what was necessary to eliminate the target. Entire fleets disintegrated before they could mount a proper defense. She felt a chill in her bones as realization hit her. These beings were not allies in the conventional sense. They were predators. Outside, the alien warlords' remaining ships turned to flee, but the Deathworlders cut them off systematically. Mara could see the fear in the enemy's formation. It was unlike anything she had ever witnessed in space warfare. The warlords had faced countless civilizations, yet here they were, panicked and disorganized, outmatched by something that seemed almost alive. One of the colony's junior officers, pale and trembling, whispered, "They're enjoying it, aren't they?" Mara's jaw tightened. "No. They're efficient. Brutal. But they're not enjoying it. They're doing what they were made to do, and nothing else matters." Kore leaned closer. "Captain, we need to decide what to do. Do we approach them? Signal them. Mara hesitated. The idea of contacting such beings was terrifying. She had no idea if they could even understand her, let alone accept humans as allies. But the alternative, doing nothing, was extinction. Patch a secure channel, she said finally. Send a basic distress message. We're alive. We need assistance. Nothing more. Corey nodded and began typing furiously. The screens filled with streams of incomprehensible alien symbols and numeric readouts. Mara felt a bead of sweat roll down her temple as the message transmitted. Every second that passed, the Deathworlders continued their onslaught, eliminating alien ships with terrifying efficiency. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the massive jagged ships turned toward Nova Prime. It stopped in orbit, hovering above the planet like a silent guardian. Its sheer presence dwarfed everything around it. Mara felt a strange mix of awe and fear. The ship's energy veins pulsed brighter, casting long shadows across the command center. Corey whispered, they're listening. Or watching us. Mara swallowed hard. Don't speak. Just don't do anything to scare them. Time stretched. Minutes passed like hours. The alien warlord's fleet had been shattered, their remaining ships fleeing in all directions. The Deathworlders did not pursue, they seemed focused entirely on the colony below. Then, slowly, a series of lights blinked from the Deathworlder ship. Not words, not signals Mara could understand, but patterns, repeating, deliberate, intelligent. Mara stared at them, realizing that, somehow, these beings had acknowledged their SOS. They had answered. But the acknowledgement was not gentle. It was not merciful. It carried the weight of inevitability, the raw power of a force that did not negotiate. The humans were alive, yes, but they had stepped into a universe where the rules were no longer their own. Mara felt a shiver run down her spine. She had called for help. And now, help had come. But it was nothing like she expected. The Deathworlders hovered above Nova Prime, silent and colossal, their jagged hulls pulsing with energy that made the very air hum. Below, the colony was battered, blackened, and trembling, but still alive. Captain Mara Voss stared out at the ships, her mind racing. They had answered the SOS, but how could humans ever work with something so alien, so terrifying? The first shuttles approached the Deathworlder vessels under strict orders, minimal crew, unarmed, and ready to retreat at a moment's notice. Mara herself led one shuttle, accompanied by Lieutenant Corey and a small team of engineers and officers. The airlock of the massive Deathworlder ship hissed open, and the interior revealed a cavernous, dimly glowing space. The walls were lined with strange spires and jagged metal protrusions, thrumming with energy. No welcoming committee appeared. No words. Only shadows that shifted and moved, as if the ship itself were alive. Mara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of centuries of evolution and survival in the very air around her. Then a figure emerged. The Deathworlder captain, or whatever it was, stood taller than any human by twice the size of a man. Its body was a combination of dark metal and sinew-like muscle, covered with jagged spikes and pulsing energy veins. Its eyes, or what Mara assumed were eyes, glowed orange, and they fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach twist. It spoke. Not in words Mara could understand, but in deep, resonant tones that shook the shuttle. Corey instinctively raised his hands. The translator devices hummed, struggling to find meaning in the sounds. Mara forced herself to remain calm. She knew this was a negotiation of sorts, even if it wasn't clear. She opened her mouth to speak, but the Deathworlder tilted its head. Then it raised a massive claw, pointing toward the observation screens that showed the shattered alien fleets below. The message was clear: protect or perish. Corey whispered, They want us to fight with them. Mara nodded slowly. We have no choice. If we don't, we're dead anyway. The Deathworlder made another gesture, this time signaling a course through the system. Mara realized they were showing them targets, enemy positions, weak points, strategic opportunities. Every move the Deathworlders had made in the past hour was being relayed visually, as if teaching humans through action. The humans studied in silence. It was brutal, direct, and efficient. The Deathworlders did not speak of mercy, negotiation, or restraint. Their way was simple: eliminate threats, survive, dominate. Mara felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Could humans follow this path without losing themselves? The first lesson came sooner than expected. A fleet of alien ships had regrouped near the outer asteroid belt. Mara and her team were to accompany the Deathworlders in a small strike vessel, observing, learning, and assisting where possible. The cockpit of the Deathworlder vessel was unlike anything Mara had seen. Controls seemed organic, responding to thoughts and muscle memory rather than touch. The vessel moved with unnatural fluidity, weaving through asteroid fields with impossible speed. Energy beams tore through the darkness, obliterating enemy ships in seconds. Mara's heart pounded. She had never witnessed such violence. And yet, for all their brutality, the Deathworlders moved with purpose. No collateral damage, no wasted effort. Every strike was precise. Mara realized humans could learn from them, not just the tactics, but the discipline, the ruthlessness tempered by strategy. Kore leaned over her shoulder, voice trembling. I don't know if we can ever do that. It's like watching predators play chess with our enemies. Mara nodded. We don't have a choice. If we want to survive, we adapt. If we want to thrive, we learn. Fast. The strike ended as quickly as it began. Alien ships were reduced to debris, scattered across the void like leaves in a storm. Mara's shuttle returned to the colony, carrying the first taste of what it meant to fight alongside the Deathworlders. Back on Nova Prime, the colonists watched from the safety of shelters and damaged observation posts. Fear lingered, but so did awe. Their protectors were monsters, yes, but monsters that could ensure survival. Still, unease gnawed at Mara. The Deathworlders had not communicated a single word of comfort, of reassurance, or even acknowledgement of humanity's suffering. They were allies, but not friends. And in war, friends were rare commodities. The next day, Mara convened her leadership team. The colony had survived the first wave, but more enemies were likely coming. We work with them, she said, her voice firm. We take their lessons, learn their ways. But we don't become them. Not yet. We survive first. We fight second. And we adapt fast. Lieutenant Kore's face was pale but determined. And if they leave? If they just vanish after the first battle? Then we are ready, Mara replied. We've learned enough in one day to start becoming what the galaxy underestimates us for. We are small, yes. But we are human. And that counts for more than they know. The Deathworlders remained above the colony, their shadows stretching across the surface like a silent promise. Every pulse of energy from their ships reminded the humans of one truth: help had come. It was terrifying, incomprehensible, and merciless, but it was there. Mara allowed herself a brief moment of hope. Not for comfort. Not for peace. But for survival. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was no longer alone. And for the first time, she understood that sometimes, the strongest allies were the ones who made you fear them more than the enemy. Far across the galaxy, in the towering chambers of the Galactic Council, the screens flickered with a view of the outer Nova Prime system. The councillors, representatives of dozens of advanced civilizations, sat in rigid rows, their faces pale behind alien masks and holographic projections. The images of the shattered warlord fleets left them speechless. Councillor Threx, a thin, serpentine figure with scales glinting in dim light, was the first to break the silence. This cannot be, he hissed. The Nova Prime system was supposed to fall within hours. Yet, look at their attackers. Look at what just happened. On the screen, massive, jagged ships moved through the void with terrifying grace, obliterating the remnants of the warlord's fleets. Each pulse of energy tore apart ships larger than most council vessels. The very laws of physics seemed to bend around them. Councillor Ziri, a crystalline entity that refracted light like a prism, shivered in its seat. Are you saying that the Deathworlders answered their SOS? And intervened? Yes, Threx said, voice tight. I've seen fleets decimated in seconds. The Nova Prime colony has survived, against all odds. Another councillor, humanoid but with 4 eyes stacked vertically, slammed a clawed hand onto the console. If this is true, then humans are no longer defenseless. And they have something we cannot fully comprehend, controlling the battlefield. The council chamber erupted into murmurs. Every representative had a stake in the region, and every one of them had underestimated humanity. For decades, humans had been seen as primitive, slow to adapt, and politically insignificant. Yet here they were, surviving, learning, and fighting alongside beings that even the Council feared. Councillor Threx leaned forward, his serpentine face drawn tight. Do we intervene? Send reinforcements? Or, do we watch? Observe how far this will go. A pause fell over the room. It was rare for the Council to be uncertain, rarer still for fear to infiltrate their discussions. But the destruction of the warlords' fleets had changed the equation. They no longer controlled the narrative. Humans did. Councillor Ziri's voice cut through the tension. We must warn our allies. Systems near the outer rim need to prepare. If the Deathworlders remain, if humans continue to learn, the balance of power will shift. And not in our favor. The chamber went silent again as they watched Nova Prime. The humans below moved like survivors determined to live, their shuttles darting through space, coordinating strikes with the Deathworlders. Mara Voss, the colony's captain, had become a symbol of defiance, a figure even the Council could not ignore. A young councillor, barely old enough to remember the last Great War, whispered, "Do you think the humans understand what they're getting into? That the Deathworlders are not merciful? Not predictable?" Threx's eyes narrowed. Perhaps. But humans adapt quickly. They learn faster than most species we've encountered. And now, they are learning from the most dangerous beings we have ever known. If they survive this, if they survive the Deathworlders, the galaxy may never underestimate them again. The councillors watched as one of Mara's shuttle strikes was executed with ruthless efficiency. Humans had learned quickly, combining Deathworlder tactics with their own ingenuity. Small alien fleets were annihilated, often before the Council could even issue warnings to nearby systems. Councillor Ziri's voice trembled. They are becoming predators, and they do not yet know their full strength. Threx's long tail coiled around the arm of his chair. We've always assumed humanity was weak, irrelevant. Now, they are neither. And the Deathworlders are the key. They have taught humans how to survive, how to strike, and how to dominate. One day, we may not have the luxury of observation. One day, we may face them directly. A holographic projection flickered, showing the destruction of an alien dreadnought. It had been a massive ship, bristling with weapons, capable of wiping out an entire colony. And yet, it was nothing. Human ingenuity, combined with Deathworlder lethality, had reduced it to burning debris. Councillor Ziri leaned back, colors shifting in fear. Do we try to communicate? To negotiate? Threx shook his head slowly. No. The humans are learning. The Deathworlders do not negotiate. And if the humans adopt their ways, negotiation may become impossible. Outside the chamber, emissaries of dozens of civilizations whispered among themselves. Panic was spreading. For centuries, the Council had dictated the order of the galaxy. Now, it watched helplessly as a small human colony, previously ignored, grew into something unpredictable, something dangerous. In the observation room, a human officer who had been sent as a liaison from the Council to Nova Prime was pale, sweating, and gripping the console. He whispered to himself, "They don't know. They don't know what they've unleashed." And indeed, no one, not the Council, not the alien warlords, not even the humans themselves, fully understood the storm that was forming. Mara Voss, far across the void, would continue to learn from the Deathworlders, fight alongside them, and adapt in ways no one could anticipate. The Council could watch, could debate, could tremble, but Nova Prime's story was no longer theirs to control. Humanity was rising. And the galaxy, for the first time, truly feared the species it had mocked for so long. The outer rim of the galaxy had never seen such chaos. Entire alien fleets were vanishing like shadows at dawn, replaced by streaks of light and fire that marked the advance of a force no one had predicted. Nova Prime's colony, once a helpless outpost, now struck with precision, guided by the lessons of the Deathworlders. Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge of the colony's flagship, the Iron Resolve, her eyes fixed on the display screens. Each icon represented an enemy fleet, a potential threat, and each would fall in minutes. The Deathworlders flanked them in massive, jagged vessels, but the humans were no longer mere observers, they were participants, striking with cunning and ingenuity that their alien allies could respect. "Coordinates for the first strike?" Mara asked. Her voice was calm, measured, though her heart raced. Lieutenant Corey, seated beside her, tapped rapidly on the console. "Outer Rim Supply Convoy. 10 ships, lightly defended, moving through the asteroid belt. They won't expect a human-led ambush." Mara's lips pressed together in a thin line. This was the moment humans had trained for, adapted for, and feared. Their first true strike outside Nova Prime. And unlike previous fights, there was no hope of mercy from either side. The Deathworlders had made that abundantly clear. "All ships, follow the plan. Use asteroid cover. Wait for my signal," she commanded. The convoy drifted through the belt, unaware of the trap forming around them. Mara's strike group slipped silently among the rocks, the iron resolve weaving between enormous boulders as though space itself obeyed their commands. The Deathworlders moved on the flanks, their presence like dark sentinels, silent but deadly. "Now," Mara said. The strike was instantaneous. Energy beams erupted from human ships, cutting engines and defenses with surgical precision. Explosions bloomed in the darkness, and the convoy erupted into chaos. Mara's team maneuvered with uncanny timing, cutting off escape routes, disabling weapons, and leaving ships crippled but intact for interrogation. Corey's voice trembled with excitement. "Captain, we did it. We actually did it." Mara allowed herself a brief nod, but she did not celebrate. This was just the beginning. Humanity's first victory beyond their home system was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. In the command center of a fleeing alien fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Reports of human attacks, combined with Deathworlder tactics, had reached them too late. Systems that had once been safe were now death zones. Communication networks jammed, supply lines severed, and morale shattered. The humans they had dismissed as weak were suddenly predators in their midst. Back on the Iron Resolve, Mara studied the damage reports. Human ingenuity was shining through. Where the Deathworlders relied on sheer power and speed, humans combined strategy, stealth, and timing. They adapted Deathworlder tactics to their own ships, making them deadly in ways even their alien allies had not anticipated. Corey pointed at the display. "Captain, sensors are picking up a large dreadnought fleet moving toward the sector. They've reorganized. They'll try to strike back." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then we hit them first. They won't wait for us, they'll assume we're weak. We use that. Prepare for another strike pattern. This time, we split into 3 groups. Hit from unexpected angles. Surprise is our ally." The humans moved like ghosts through space, weaving between asteroids and debris fields, striking faster than their enemies could react. One alien dreadnought, nearly half a kilometer long, was disabled within minutes by coordinated human fire, while smaller fleets were shredded in seconds. The outer rim trembled under the sudden, ruthless efficiency of Nova Prime's defenders. In the alien command center, the dread was palpable. What are these humans?" a commander hissed. "They are not following conventional tactics. They adapt, they anticipate, and they learn faster than any species I've ever known." Meanwhile, Mara observed her fleet. The humans were changing, evolving in the crucible of battle. Each strike made them bolder, faster, and more effective. The Deathworlders, while silent, seemed to approve. They recognized potential, and Mara felt it too. Her people were no longer merely survivors. They were warriors. One officer, a young woman named Jorah, looked up from the tactical display. "Captain, the aliens are retreating. They're abandoning the sector." Mara allowed herself a rare, brief smile. "Good. Let them run. But we do not rest. We press the advantage. We teach them to fear humans, not just the Deathworlders." The council across the galaxy watched in alarm. Reports flooded in. Humans had struck decisively, unassisted in strategy, and with lethal precision. Systems that had once dismissed Earth as insignificant now whispered fearfully of a rising force. Corey leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. "Captain, I never thought I'd see the day. We're actually becoming what we always dreamed of. A real force." Mara's eyes glimmered with determination. "Yes, Corey. But remember this, The galaxy has not seen our limits yet. Today we struck. Tomorrow, we dominate. The Deathworlders taught us how to fight. Now it's our turn to show what it means to be human. And far across the void, the jagged shapes of the Deathworlders watched silently, their presence a constant reminder. Humanity had allies and enemies who would test every step of their rise. The humans of Nova Prime had struck back. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. The aftermath of the first major strikes left Nova Prime both victorious and uneasy. Fires still smoldered across the colony's outskirts, debris littered the streets, and the air was thick with ash and the smell of burnt metal. But more than the physical scars, a different tension hung over the human population, one harder to measure, heavier to bear. Captain Mara Voss walked through the central plaza, flanked by a few trusted officers. The colonists stared at her with a mixture of awe, relief, and unease. They had survived, yes, but they had seen the Deathworlders in action. And what they had seen was terrifying. In the distance, a Deathworlder ship hovered silently, enormous and jagged, casting long shadows across the city. It had not left, it would not leave. Mara knew that their allies were not gentle teachers, they were predators who demanded obedience and efficiency. Lieutenant Corey caught up with her, breathing hard. Captain, some of the volunteers, they're shaken. They've seen what the Deathworlders do to captives, to enemies. Some are saying, we're becoming like them. Mara paused, looking toward the hovering ship. Sparks of orange energy pulsed along its hull, illuminating the streets below. She nodded slowly. Yes. That's the danger. The power we've gained has a price. Every move we make alongside them, we risk losing ourselves. But if we don't learn, we die. The galaxy doesn't care who we are, only who survives. They entered the makeshift command center, where reports streamed in from the recent engagements. Mara scanned the data, alien ships destroyed, prisoners captured, or in some cases, eradicated by the Deathworlders' methods. She winced at the details. Brutality on a scale humans had never faced. Some of her own crew had watched from observation decks, unable to intervene. The Deathworlders did not ask for permission. They simply acted. A young officer, trembling, approached Mara. Captain, the Deathworlders, they executed the prisoners. No mercy. The aliens we captured, they're gone. Mara's jaw tightened. I know. She looked at the officer with a cold, hard stare. Do you think they asked for our opinion? Do you think we would survive if we hesitated? These are not creatures we can reason with. They are allies only because they have their own code. It is brutal. It is necessary. And we must decide where we draw the line, for ourselves. Corey stepped forward, voice low. But Captain, some of the colonists are frightened. They wonder, if this is what we become, what's the difference between us and them? Mara's eyes softened for a moment. The difference is choice. We choose to survive. We choose to adapt. We can watch, learn, and apply what is necessary, without losing our humanity entirely. But we must be honest, the galaxy will not wait for us to debate ethics while enemies burn. The cost of power is always high. The question is whether we can pay it without losing ourselves completely. Outside, a group of volunteers returned from their first joint mission with the Deathworlders. Their faces were pale, their hands shaking. Some had fired weapons directly at fleeing enemies, following Deathworlder guidance. Others had witnessed horrors they could not forget. A medic whispered to Mara, Captain, they are asking questions. About who we are becoming. About what it means to fight alongside them. Mara nodded silently. She understood. Every victory carried a shadow. Every strike that saved a human life also meant embracing tactics that could strip away their moral certainty. She could see it in their eyes, the conflict between survival and conscience. That night, Mara stood on the observation deck, staring into the dark void beyond Nova Prime. The Deathworlder ships floated above the planet, vast and silent, their energy pulses glowing like a heartbeat that could crush worlds. The human fleet lay in orbit, small, but growing, learning, adapting. They were no longer helpless. And yet, the cost of that strength was clear. She thought of the alien ships they had destroyed, the lives extinguished, the fear and awe in the eyes of her own people. To survive in this galaxy, humans would need to wield power as the deathworlders did. And to wield it, some part of themselves would have to harden. Corey joined her, voice barely audible over the hum of the energy shields. "Captain, are we losing ourselves?" Mara did not answer immediately. She let the silence stretch, letting the hum of the deathworlder energy fill the void between them. Finally, she spoke. "Not yet. But every day, every battle, we walk closer to that line. Our challenge is to survive, and to remember who we are while doing it. We are learning to be hunters, yes, but hunters with a purpose. Without that purpose, we become nothing. With it, we become feared. And in this galaxy, fear is survival." Corey nodded slowly, absorbing her words. The fleet below continued its patrols, the deathworlders a constant presence. Humans had tasted power, and with it came a responsibility they were only beginning to understand. In the distance, the alien remnants regrouped, plotting revenge, unaware that Nova Prime was no longer a helpless colony. They had underestimated humanity. They had dismissed them. And soon, the humans, tempered by the deathworlders' ruthless teachings, would strike back again. But Mara knew that every victory would cost something. The eyes of her people would see things no one should. The hands that fired weapons would tremble with the memory of what they had done. Survival demanded sacrifice, not just of life, but of innocence. And that, Mara understood, was the true cost of power. The void above Nova Prime was quiet for the first time in weeks. Smoke still rose from the cities, fires still burned, but the battle was over. Captain Mara Voss stood on the observation deck of the Iron Resolve, staring at the jagged silhouettes of the deathworlder ships as they drifted slowly away. Their pulsing energy veins cast eerie orange light across the planet, like a reminder of the power humanity had harnessed and the price they had paid. Lieutenant Corey joined her, eyes weary, voice soft. "They're leaving, for now. Will they come back?" Mara shook her head slowly. "I don't know. And I don't think it matters. They taught us what we needed to survive. That's enough. What comes next is up to us." The human fleet hovered in orbit, battered but alive. Ships had been destroyed, crews shaken, and the smell of ozone and burnt metal lingered in the air. Yet humanity had endured. The galaxy had watched, had underestimated them, and had been forced to reconsider. Humans were no longer a small, defenseless colony, they were a force to be reckoned with. Down on the surface, colonists emerged from shelters and rubble-strewn streets. Children, faces smeared with soot, stared at the sky in awe. Survivors embraced, tears mixing with ash. The lesson was clear: humans could endure, humans could fight, and humans could rise against the impossible. Mara walked through the central plaza, her boots crunching on shattered glass and debris. Her officers followed, tired but alert. The faces of her people reflected a mixture of relief and reverence. The deathworlders had not stayed to comfort them. They had acted like predators, efficient, brutal, and precise. Yet humanity had learned from them without losing itself completely. Corey touched her shoulder. "Captain, what do we tell the galaxy now? The Council, the other systems, they've seen what we can do." Mara's gaze swept over the survivors. "We tell them we survived. We tell them we are ready. And we tell them this: underestimate humanity at your own peril. The galaxy may fear the deathworlders, but it will fear humans soon enough." In the skies above, the last of the deathworlder ships glowed against the backdrop of stars, then vanished into the void. Mara felt a strange mix of relief and melancholy. These allies, or predators, had shaped humanity in ways the colonists could not yet understand. The galaxy had changed, and so had they. The Galactic Council, watching from afar, would take notice. Their representatives had trembled at reports of human strikes and deathworlder cooperation. Nova Prime had become a symbol of defiance, of unexpected strength, of survival against insurmountable odds. And the Council could no longer treat Earth and its colonies as irrelevant. Mara returned to the command center of the Iron Resolve, sitting at the main console. She studied the data streams, remaining enemy forces scattered and demoralized, colonies secured, and human fleets ready to expand their reach. Every decision she made now would shape the next era. Humanity was rising, and no one could stop it. Corey leaned over, scanning tactical reports. "The deathworlders, they didn't teach us everything. There are things they do, strategies we can't replicate fully. Mara nodded. No, we can't replicate them, and we shouldn't. We take what we need, adapt it to our own strengths, and then become something new. Something uniquely human. That is how we survive. That is how we rise. Outside, the colonists began rebuilding. The work was slow and painstaking, but determination shone in every hand and every face. Humanity had survived impossible odds, and now it had the knowledge and experience to thrive. In the council chambers far across the galaxy, debate raged. Some saw the humans as a threat that must be contained. Others wondered if there was a new balance forming, a species tempered by brutality, capable of surviving forces that even the council feared. One thing was certain: Earth and its colonies were no longer irrelevant. The galaxy would remember this day. Back on Nova Prime, Mara walked through the plaza, stopping to look at the young survivors. A small boy held a broken toy, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Mara knelt beside him. "One day," she said softly, "you'll understand. Humanity has survived because we never gave up. And one day, you'll carry that strength forward." The boy nodded, too young to fully grasp the enormity of what had happened, but old enough to feel it. Around them, the colony began to stir with life again. Humanity had faced annihilation, and emerged stronger. Mara returned to the Iron Resolve, standing at the observation deck as the suns of Nova Prime dipped below the horizon. The Deathworlders were gone. The alien warlords had been shattered. Humanity had survived, adapted, and struck back. And now, a new era began. An era in which humans would no longer be overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. An era in which humanity would rise from the ashes of survival to become a force feared and respected across the galaxy. Mara clenched her fists, feeling the weight of responsibility, of power, and of possibility. The galaxy had been warned. Humanity had proven itself. And the story of Nova Prime, of the Deathworlders, and of humans who refused to die would echo through the stars for generations to come. The stars beyond Nova Prime were endless, but humanity no longer feared the void. They had faced death, learned from predators, and emerged victorious. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. And the future, uncertain, vast, and unyielding, awaited.